You should check out Basketball Insiders every day for your NBA fix. Alex Kennedy does a great job covering the NBA. And, there's a lot going on and off the court, Alex, as we know the playoffs are going on, but they haven't been compelling. I think Oklahoma City and Golden State's still going to give us some stories, but as a whole, these playoffs haven't been great, but there's a heck of a lot going on off the floor. And I want to start with some of the off-the-court stuff. Here locally, Wildwood High grad, former Pacers coach Frank Vogel. Looks like he's going to be the next coach in Orlando, Alex. So let's start with that. How do you think he is as a fit for the talent they have on that roster?
I think it makes a lot of sense. Initially I was wondering if there would be problems offensively because some of the things that he struggled with in Indiana were, offense-related. At times they would have some problems scoring the ball, and especially late in games, that was one of the issues that Larry Bird brought up, and that's why he wanted to replace him. But in Orlando, they have a ton of young players that love to defend. When you talk about Victor Oladipo, Elfrid Payton, Aaron Gordon, these are guys that are, they were drafted because they're excellent defenders. So I think Vogel's going to love that. I think it makes a lot of sense on the defensive end. And if he can improve and learn from some of the things that happened in Indiana offensively, then it makes a lot of sense. I talked to a few different Magic players, guys like Elfrid Payton and T.J. Watson, who played with Vogel in Indiana, and those guys are so excited. They know that he's really going to help this team. Honestly, when I look at it, I think that he's an upgrade over Scott Skiles. So initially when Skiles decided to back out and resign from the job after a number of coaches were already hired, it looked like it was going to be really bad for Orlando, but I think it was a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, and, this is a team that last year got out of the gates early in Orlando and then kind of hit the skids a little bit there. Is it a coaching thing or is it just because it was a young team? Do you think that they are a coach away from maybe taking that next step in a very weak Eastern Conference?
Yeah, it's very possible. For the last 2 years, they've been trying to make the playoffs. 2 summers ago, they went out and signed a bunch of veterans, guys like Channing Frye, Ben Gordon, Willie Green, Luke Ridnour. They were trying to make that leap, but the young players weren't really ready. Last year they brought in Scott Skiles, and I think initially they played really well. They stepped up on the defensive end, and then they just really started to struggle. And, there were reports that around January, Scott Skiles started to have second thoughts about the job and, doubted if he wanted to be there long term. And that's really the time they started struggling. So I don't know if there was a correlation between him, wanting to leave the job and the Magic struggling. I do think that, with his style, he yells at guys, and sometimes that can have him lose the locker room. It happened in Milwaukee, happened in Chicago. That's been something that he's known for, whereas Frank Vogel is someone that is a player's coach. Guys love playing for him. His former players rave about him. I think that could be a good fit in Orlando as well, because these young guys, it's one thing to have a disciplinarian and learn from them, but, you don't want them to, turn on the coach either. I think having a guy that's going to push them on defense while also being a player's coach and, while these guys are going to unite, want to play for him, I think that's important as well.
By the way, we are tentatively scheduled to have Frank Vogel on the show Wednesday, so we'll hear from Frank, I guess, after he's formally introduced as the next head coach of the Orlando Magic. We're talking with Alex Kennedy right now. Give me your thoughts on Hornacek going to the Knicks. What does that say about the Knicks now that they went with a guy like Hornacek, who a lot of people, Knicks fans, not really looking at him as a triangle type of guy. So read the tea leaves on that one.
Well, I was kind of surprised because initially it seemed like they were going to stick with Kurt Rambis, and, he's obviously a good friend of Phil Jackson's and had experience with a triangle offense. It's kind of weird because it's kind of an in-between hire. They didn't go with Rambis, who is going to stick with the triangle offense, but they didn't go with, one of the top guys that showed interest in the job, like Tom Thibodeau or Jeff Van Gundy. They kind of went with one of the guys that they may be able to convince to use elements of the triangle, but I think he is a very good coach. In Phoenix, that first year they won 48 games. He was number 2 in Coach of the Year voting. And he did a very good job. His players liked him a lot. He motivated them. And really, I think he fits today's NBA. His team shot a lot of threes. They, got up and down the floor. They scored the ball a lot. So it does make sense. I'm curious to see if they do want him to run elements of the triangle. It's possible he'll add some things like that to his offense. But I think it's a good hire. I think the biggest problem that happened in Phoenix with Hornacek is they played so well early on in his first season as a coach that immediately expectations got so high maybe unrealistically high. They went out and they started signing veteran free agents. They thought they could be a contender, and that wasn't the case. They were still a young team, and they made a number of trades that kind of changed that roster significantly after that first year. So I don't blame Hornacek for the struggles that Phoenix had. I think he can go to New York and do a good job.
Alex Kennedy here on 97.3 ESPN. What's going on in Houston is are the Sixers going to lose their top assistant, Mike D'Antoni? Do you think that he will be the guy in Houston?
It's possible. They've interviewed him now, I think twice, maybe more. They like him a lot, it seems like. I'm not sure how it's going to work on the defensive end because James Harden obviously is known for not defending, and some of those guys, I'm not sure how they fit Mike D'Antoni's his system, but it does seem like he could be the guy, and then maybe Daryl Morey goes out and tries to sign players that do fit, D'Antoni's system a bit better. He seems like he's the front runner right now. That was a report from Yahoo Sports, and they've interviewed a ton of people. They really have had a big search, but it seems like D'Antoni is the guy. That wouldn't surprise me if he was hired pretty soon.
Now, there was a lot of speculation that if he was going to get a job, that the Sixers might have a knee-jerk reaction. Do you think that is now kind of out the window?
Yeah, hearing the way they've committed to Brett Brown, I feel like they're going to stick with him. I think that was something that was speculated early on because he's more experienced than Brett Brown, and he is a notable name. But it seems like they're committed to Brown, and they feel like he could be the guy that develops this roster going forward. So, you haven't heard much of that lately, and I think there's a reason for it.
There have been some reports here locally that if D'Antoni gets that job, P.J. Carlesimo would join the staff in Philadelphia. And we had P.J. on yesterday, which he would have told us that. But that being said, they have a connection there, Brett and P.J. in San Antonio. Let's talk about Brett and the Sixers a little bit here before we get to the court and the games. They won the lottery the other night, Alex, and obviously this is something that they've been trying to do for the last couple of years. They end up with that number one pick. Now that they finally got that number one pick, what has that done to change people's view around the league of the franchise? I mean, are people finally saying, you know what, it finally panned out for them, and now this thing's going to really take another big step?
Yeah, I think so. That was kind of what this whole plan was modeled around, winning that number one overall pick and being able to have as many draft picks as possible. So I do think that really does help them. It changed the perception a bit, especially because now you're hearing them talk about turning things around pretty quickly. So they can get that top overall pick in, maybe go out and sign a free agent, a young free agent, maybe make a trade or two. Now people know, okay, the Sixers could have the number one overall pick next year, could have Dario Saric, which it seems like he's going to be coming over, could have Joel Embiid, plus all their young guys, and suddenly you start looking at the Sixers roster and seeing that the future's pretty bright. I do think that people are now looking at the Sixers as an up-and-coming team, a promising young team, rather than, a punchline.
Yeah, now, your opinion, one or two, number one, there's two guys, and Brett Brown pretty much admitted to us yesterday. He said, I read the mock drafts. I know there's pretty much two guys that are in contention here. For your money and Philadelphia's fit, which guys fits better?
Well, so far I've been having Brandon Ingram number one in my mock drafts. I don't think you can go wrong with either guy. I think both guys are going to be very good pros. But the way I look at it, Philly still needs that perimeter scorer, that number one guy that can score the ball, be a go-to option. I think that Brandon Ingram is that guy. He scored the ball really well in college. He projects to be a very good scorer in the NBA. He can shoot the ball from anywhere. I like his game a lot. Ben Simmons, he's a very intriguing prospect, but his biggest issue is not being able to shoot the ball and score the ball very well. He can finish at the rim. He can defend. He can rebound. He can pass. He's an excellent point forward. But the way I kind of look at it, I think Ben Simmons is a guy that, could be really good if he had offensive weapons around him. I think he's the kind of guy that elevates his teammates' play, because he is that point forward that's going to get guys easy baskets, whereas Ingram's that number one guy that can score the ball really well and be a go-to guy. So as of right now, I have Ingram. It could change between now and the draft. There's obviously a lot of time. And the Sixers are going to do their homework and, have these guys at the facility and things like that. But as of right now, I do have Ingram going number one.
Alex, what happened to Simmons that he was such a home run pick, and now there is some debate? Was it Simmons dropping off? Is there things that people don't like about him? Or was it that Ingram just surprise so many people to put himself in that conversation?
It's a combination of the two. In college, Simmons, his team, LSU, didn't win a whole lot of games. They struggled. And I think, some teams started putting him under the microscope and wondering, okay, why is this team struggling? He was surrounded by shooters in college. He didn't have any other star-level players next to him, but he had a ton of shooters around him. And I think initially everyone thought, okay, this is what he thrives in. This is the kind of system that is built for him to succeed. And I think, his individual numbers were fantastic. He had a number of games where he was just, filling the stat sheet and dominating. But I think the team's lack of success did cause some teams to start reevaluating that number one pick. And I think also in today's NBA, shooting is valued so much. When he was, in high school and when he was a younger player, everyone was saying, okay, he's an obvious number one pick. And I think people thought his shot would improve. Now with, him entering the draft and still struggling to shoot the ball, shooting is valued so much. I think that's caused some teams to, step back and reevaluate. And Ingram did have a monster year. He wasn't really being talked about as a top pick, and then all of a sudden has his breakout campaign. It kind of reminds me of D'Angelo Russell last year, where he wasn't really talked about entering the year as a freshman, has a great year, and then goes number two. I think it's a combination of the two.
Yeah, it's funny because I asked Coach Brown about that yesterday in that because he mentioned a couple of past drafts, like Odin over Durant. He mentioned Sam Bowie over Jordan. And you wonder, Alex, if that enters NBA front office members' minds that everyone's talking about this kid Simmons. He's the guy. Do they look like, complete idiots or buffoons if they're the team that passes on that guy that becomes the transcendent player? Is there so much pressure on the number one team to take Ben Simmons, or do you think that it's a legitimate argument?
Well, I think those past drafts do have to factor in. You don't want to be the guy that's known for missing on, a top player in the NBA. You just don't. So I think that's why guys are going to do their due diligence and really make sure that they have the right pick. But I do think that also there's even more pressure this year because with the cap space and, the salary cap rising so significantly, rookie scale contracts, those aren't going to rise. Those were locked in with the 2011 CBA negotiations. So those are the biggest bargains in the NBA right now. First-round picks. You can lock a guy up on cheap contracts, and it's just a great value. So I think there's even more, you really don't want to miss on a top pick now because you're going to have that guy locked up, and that gives you the ability to go out and sign players and have that guy on a bargain deal. So I think that's even bigger part of it too. But, yeah, I think that with Simmons, he's one of those guys that has been talked about since he was very young. That's kind of like Greg Oden. Everyone thought, okay, Oden's the number one pick whenever he comes out. And then Kevin Durant was the guy that kind of emerged that college season and played really well. So I think in this case, you kind of look at Oden and Simmons being similar and Ingram and Durant being similar in that comparison. I do think that Simmons' reputation does help him. But I think, you have to do your homework, and the college season does really matter. So it's going to be tough. I think both guys have an argument at number one, but we'll see what happens.
How about this question then? If Embiid is your guy, the Sixers pretty much, Brett Brown's quote yesterday was, I do believe he will be on the floor opening night. All right, so I'll take him for his word there. If Embiid is your best player or the guy you're building around, which guy fits best with Joel Embiid's skill set? Simmons or Ingram?
I would say Ingram because you want to have that inside-outside attack, the guy that can score in the perimeter while Embiid is dominating down low. When I look at their team as a whole, I see, a number of big men. And some people have said that, Ben Simmons projects to be a 4 in the NBA. Some people feel that way. He may be able to play small forward because he does have some of those, passing skills, and, he's quick enough on defense to guard threes. But, if they see him as a power forward in the NBA, then, that could lead to some more issues because you do have so many big men already on this roster. Dario Saric projects to be a power forward in the NBA. I think that kind of, those redundant pieces could lead to them also saying, okay, maybe Ingram's our guy. Or, they make a trade potentially. There have already been rumors about Jahlil Okafor possibly being on the block. They could look to make a trade as well.
Let's get into those Okafor possibilities. Talking with Alex Kennedy, he's the managing editor, basketballinsiders.com. Now, some of this has been pure speculation that there's a fit. There was some rumors back at the trade deadline, Alex, that Boston was interested. I think the Sixers smartly stepped back and kind of wanted to say, well, let me wait to see where that pick is. They have the number 3 pick. Is that a deal that makes sense? 3 for Okafor.
I don't think so. I wouldn't trade him. I think that, like you said, there's a huge drop-off after the first 2 picks in this draft, and that's why Boston is willing to trade it. There's no guy there that, you can guarantee is going to be maybe a star in the NBA. So I think there was a big drop-off after the first 2. And I think right now isn't their time to trade Okafor. I think the reason he's coming up in trade rumors and the reason teams are trying to pounce on him is because his value is somewhat low. Last year everyone was looking at him as a potential star going forward, and now there's so much negative talk about him, whether it's his defense or some of the off-court incidents. It just doesn't make sense to trade him right now. I think it'd be better for them to hold on to him and let him play well, develop and get that value back up. If they did want to trade him, it makes more sense to do it down the road. But I think you hold on to him and see what he can become rather than, parting ways with him now.
Are there, do you think that there will be multiple teams that will call the Sixers with not only their pick and the 2 other picks they have, but because of their roster logjam? Do you think that they will have a lot of decisions to make leading up to the draft?
Yeah, for sure. Anytime you have the number 1 pick, teams are going to call you. And they have multiple picks in this draft, so they're going to have a lot of calls and a lot of options, honestly. I don't think they trade the number 1 pick. I think they're going to, use that selection. I would be stunned if they did move that. But yeah, with the roster the way it is and the fact that they do have multiple picks, I think that's going to lead to teams calling them and trying to, pry that away from them or pry one of those away from them. And yeah, their roster right now, teams talk about that, them having redundant pieces. And at the trade deadline, as you mentioned, there were a number of rumors surrounding the Sixers. Just because not only do they have pieces that are similar, but they have so many holes around those pieces. I think that's going to lead to a lot of conversations.
Alex Kennedy's with us. So that being said, there are games on the floor, a lot of good stuff off the floor there from Alex. Cavaliers-Raptors last night. Through 2 games, Cleveland's outscored the Raptors by 50. They were 1 game separated in the regular season, 50 in 2 games so far. What's more indicative of these 2 teams?
I think it's the first 2 postseason games because this Cavs team is playing on another level right now. We haven't seen them be this effective since they put this core together. They're just so talented, and they're playing unselfishly. They're knocking down threes, and they're playing very efficient basketball. In the first game, you had Kyrie Irving and LeBron James shoot 22 of 30. Last night, they were both dominant again. At times, it looks like a layup line because LeBron's just scoring at the basket and, with ease, and Kyrie Irving's doing whatever he wants. And then also their supporting cast has really stepped up. You have guys like Channing Frye, J.R. Smith playing really well. So I think it's more – I think these first 2 games are more indicative of how the series is going to go going forward. I would be surprised if Toronto won 1 game because not only are the Cavs playing so well, you have Kyle Lowry playing very poorly, walking off the court while the game's still going on. There are a number of issues in Toronto right now. DeMar DeRozan hasn't been very efficient. The combination of Cleveland playing their best basketball and Toronto really struggling is why I think this series ends pretty quickly.
All right, we got to wait till Sunday to see the main attraction. Will the main attraction live up to the hype? Do you think Oklahoma City can take Game 3 and keep people believing? I think if Golden State wins Game 3, you're going to start to see some of the Oklahoma City people trail off a bit. So can Oklahoma City hold court at home?
Yeah, I agree with you, but this Thunder team plays so well at home that I think it'll be an interesting series. I don't think it's over. I think after last game with the Warriors playing such great basketball and responding to that Game 1 loss, people are acting like, the Warriors are going to run away with this, but I really do think it's going to be a longer series. Entering the series, I picked the Warriors in 7 games. I do think they're going to advance, but I think this Thunder team with not only, 2 star players in Durant and Westbrook, but I think the adjustment of having Adams and Cantor in the game together poses some problems for the Warriors. So I do think that the Thunder can keep this close and make each game going forward pretty competitive, and they may be able to steal some games at home.
Alex Kennedy's with us. You can listen to both games here on 97.3 ESPN. A couple quickies for you. Who's number 3 for you?
I have Dragon Bender at this point, but I think Boston is going to trade the pick. I don't think, it's going to be to Philadelphia, but I think they're going to look at all their options. There were some rumors that we were hearing that if it wasn't top 2, Boston was going to explore trading the pick. because they are, a team that wants to win now. And drafting a guy like Bender, I don't think makes as much sense as trading the pick. But right now, I have Bender as the third best prospect.
I asked this question to Brett Brown yesterday because they got the first pick in the draft, and I wonder, okay, they've been trying to do this for a couple of years. They never got the first pick. What would have been different for them had they got the first pick? I surmised you could say Karl Anthony Towns, but he said they would have taken Embiid number 1 overall regardless. So would that have changed their pick last year, I wonder? So what do you think would have been different had they got the number 1 pick once over this 3 years previous to this year?
Yeah, that's a great question. It also makes you wonder, would they have gotten the first pick this year, or would they have been able to win some more games if they went back and had, drafted different guys? Like you said, they liked Embiid a lot. And honestly, that wasn't that strange because he was being talked about as the best prospect in that draft without the injury, before the injury. The injury may have made them second-guess that a bit, but I do think that they liked Embiid a lot. And they thought he had star potential. He was drawing comparisons to Hakeem Olajuwon before that draft. So it's not crazy to think he could have went number 1. Last year, I do think that there was legitimate debate between Towns and Okafor. Some people felt like Okafor was the more sure thing just because he, had the post moves and he had so much success in college. Now I think, with hindsight, Towns has been fantastic. He had one of the best rookie seasons in NBA history. His PER was top 5 in NBA history. So with hindsight, yeah, you can say Towns is the guy, but I'm not sure much would have changed.
Hindsight for you, would you still take Embiid if you were the Sixers?
I don't think so. I think there's just so much risk there. Guys like Andrew Wiggins, DeMar Parker, I think those guys are the safer, bets just because anytime you have a big man that has an injury like this and something that's been nagging and, limited him, you're always concerned that down the road, holding so much weight and, having those injuries in the past could cause him to either have injuries again or not be able to reach his full potential. So I do think that I would use a different pick, but, they're really committed to Embiid, and they feel like he could be the guy going forward. I'm not sure about that, but I understand where they're coming from.
The managing editor of Basketball Insiders, he's at Alex Kennedy, NBA on Twitter. We always appreciate the insight, pal.
Thanks a lot. Take care.